Hey everyone, Andrew here. So back in September, I did a beginner's guide to the Disneyland and California Adventure parks, and I promised I would eventually get to the Walt Disney World parks. I planned to do that, immediately, and then, do other videos as well in between. But, work and life and everything got in the way of that, so I had to kind of postpone that until I was able to get to it now. And I was also very wary to do this and to get this going because there's a lot of stuff that I had to consider, especially the similarities between Magic Kingdom and Disneyland. There's a lot of rides that are very similar in their tone and similar in things, and it's like, do I just retell you all the information that I did in the Disneyland side? Do I just fast forward through that and tell you to go watch the Disneyland review if you want an opinion on it? And I decided that I'm going to try to treat this mostly like you hadn't watched the Disneyland side. Like, I will give you a little bit of information about each of the rides, if it has a counterpart in Disney, which I prefer, if there is enough difference to even really make a choice of that nature. And if you want more in-depth stuff on any of those rides, you can watch the Disneyland one where I take more time with that. But yeah, today I will be looking at Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom. I will be going through it ride by ride and talking about what I like about them, what ones work, what ones don't. I won't be able to go into as much detail with this one as I would particularly love to do it, both because I already did a lot of that for some of the rides, but it's also when it comes to, say, the food. Because the Disneyland one, I've been through all of the restaurants, I've tried all of the food, and with the Walt Disney World, I've barely eaten any of the food ever. For a number of reasons. One of the big reasons is there's not a great amount of options. Like, there's a lot of food places, but the majority of them are chicken strips, burgers, nuggets, sandwiches. Like, it's the same food over and over and over again. And it's kind of hard to decide to eat at Disney World with those prices when there's so much better food in the surrounding area. Yeah, I will talk about some of the restaurants. There's a couple I will call out if I've been to it and I'm like, oh no, yeah, this food was pretty good. There's certain rides in these parks, especially in, say, like Animal Kingdom and some of them, where I haven't ridden them yet. Some are because I'm terrified of them, and some are just I haven't had the time. They're too new. Legitimately, they just did a brand new ride and a brand new show this year, and I haven't been able to get back to it. Plus, there was another ride that came out the year before, and I tried. I couldn't get onto it. But I will be as honest as I can and tell you if I have or have not been on something, and give you an opinion based off what I've seen and what I've heard and what other people have told me about it. So let's get going. Today we will be talking about Magic Kingdom. When you park in the parking lot for Magic Kingdom, one of the things I want to point out, because this is insane knowledge when you know it, the parking lot for Magic Kingdom is bigger than Disneyland. Like, you can fit all of the Disneyland park into the parking lot of Magic Kingdom. That's how massive just the parking lot is, let alone the actual park. But when you do park in there, you will come up to a choice. You'll have two options. You either can get on the monorail to go to the park, or you can get on the ferry boat to travel across the lake to the park. And I would only recommend doing the ferry is if you're in no rush or if the boat is just showing up. Otherwise, you want to do the monorail, because the monorail will get you there in like 2 minutes, whereas the ferry can take upwards of 10 more if the weather's bad, type of thing. So yeah, just be aware of what you're doing and which one you're choosing and how much time you want to waste on something like that. So we start at the front entrance for Magic Kingdom, which is, of course, Main Street, USA. Much like the Disneyland side of it, there's no real rides here. We have the railroad, which goes around the entire park, which I still think is a great design. Although I feel with the Magic Kingdom, they should have put more stops in. There's only 3 stops, one on Main Street, USA, one in Adventureland, and one in Fantasyland. And I feel like they could have put one in Tomorrowland. That's fine, but it's such long distances to walk that you very rarely end up using the train. There's also, it goes around a big chunk of the park that isn't really being used for much of anything, at least ride-wise. There's most likely buildings and stuff with all of the parade stuff there. There's no real rides. There is some vehicles that you can ride on. There is an omnibus, firehouse motor car, and the horse-drawn trolley. These will take you from the front entrance to the castle. They're fine. They're not really rides, so I'm not going to give them a rating. Most of this is just shopping areas. Food-wise, you got a couple different options. You have Tony's Town Square Restaurant, which does pastas and salads and seafood. You have the bakery, which is basically Starbucks. The Plaza Ice Cream Parlor, where you can get scooped ice cream and waffle bowls. You have the Plaza Restaurant, which is burgers and salads and sundaes. You have Casey's Corner, which is especially hot dogs and nachos. That place is pretty good. It's got some good stuff into it. And then you have the Crystal Palace, which is this big, elaborate crystal building where they do a buffet style where you get to meet different Disney characters. A lot of Mickey and Minnie and all that. It's good. It is pricey and hard to get into. Like, I only recommend it if you have kids. So, moving on, we have the Adventureland side, where we run into the Swiss Family Treehouse. This is a big, elaborate treehouse where you walk up these sets of stairs and see different parts of this space. It's all interwoven and mixes really well and has some really cool little effects and stuff in it. But at the end of the day, it's a walkthrough. You walk up and down these stairs. Good if you have a kid with a lot of energy, but not something you really need to go out of your way for. It's a 1.5 out of 5. There is a Disneyland equivalent. It's basically the same thing. Like, they changed it into Tarzan, but they're now changing it back into a more Swiss Family Robinson-esque style for some reason. Moving on, you have the Magic Carpets of Aladdin. This is one of 3 flying rides where you hop in and you get this little device and you can go up and down as it spins around in a circle. And this is easily the weakest of the 3. This one is the weakest because, well, one, it's a 4-seater, so it means you can get more people in, but there's only, like, really, you have to fight for control, basically, like this, and sometimes you're just going to be in a spot that you can't control it at all, and it's slow, and it's fine. It doesn't take up a lot of space, but it's not something to really waste your time or go on. Especially when there are better options of the same kind of ride. I give it a 1.5. Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room, which is a lovely little show. You go in and these birds sing to you, and you also have singing flowers and singing statues. This is really fun, elaborate show with some really good music and some really good character and some really good heart to it. I love it a lot. It's a solid 4 out of 5 for me. So this is more close to the traditional version. There is a version in Disneyland that is pretty much identical. It didn't used to be that way. So for about a decade, between like 2000 and 2010, 2015, there was a different version of the show called the Enchanted Tiki Room Under New Management. It was basically, the plot of that version is the Tiki Room got bought by Zazu from Lion King and Iago from Aladdin, and they wanted to make the show more popular and more hip and more modern, and they end up enraging this Tiki god who pops out and makes them, sing the show properly and all this, that, and the other. It's a show that has a terrible reputation, and I watched that show a couple times. I didn't love it, but I didn't think it was all that awful. Like, the bad part about it is that you have Gilbert Gottfried's Iago singing "You Ain't Never Had a Friend Like Me." That was like the worst part. But the goddess, the Tiki goddess that shows up and attacks them, that thing was an amazing animatronic. Really cool, really creative. But unfortunately, there was a bit of a fire, and the Iago and Zazu animatronics caught fire. They were the only parts that caught fire, surprisingly, which has led to some speculation that it was an inside job. I know cast members hated the show, and people really did not like the show at all, and I just thought it was fine. The one thing I will say with under new management, the thing that I liked is that they did it at Walt Disney World and they left the Disneyland one alone, which to me I've always liked and respected that. Like, keep one that's the traditional, and then let the other one you can change and try different things and be more creative, because you still have the traditional to go back to. At least it's not gone forever like what they do with so many of the rides, like all of the Pirates of the Caribbean when they added Jack Sparrow, what they did to Splash Mountain, what they did to so many things, where it's like, we're going to do and modernize it, and if you like the old one, tough. It's gone forever. So I'm happy to see that, you know, a version of the old one survived and they managed to try to make it birth, and it's nice to see it being back to the old show and having that same charm and level of intrigue. Like, I definitely think the original is better, and it's better to have that there. So I'm glad they've gone back more to the traditional Tiki Room. We then have the Jungle Cruise, where you get on this boat with a skipper, and he takes you down through the jungle. You're seeing animals and creatures, while the skipper tells you very, very bad jokes. It's alright, it's got some moments to it, but it all depends on your skipper. Some skippers makes it in a 5 out of 5 experience. Some make it the worst experience and you're desperate to get off the boat. It varies. I have to give it a 2.5 because it can vary just depending on that. They do a Christmas version called the Jingle Cruise, which I like, and I respect them for doing that. I wish they did more of that kind of Christmassy stuff throughout the entire park, but yeah. As far as comparing the two, they're almost identical. Like, there's different scenarios between the Disneyland one and the Magic Kingdom one, but it's the same ride, almost beat for beat, so either one is fine. We then have Pirates of the Caribbean, where you go inside this old Spanish mission and load up onto this boat, and then you're dropped down into the world of pirates and seeing Jack Sparrow try to get treasure and all that. So Pirates is legitimately one of my favorite rides. I absolutely do love it. I love the aesthetic. I love the drops. I love all of the stuff in it. However, I have to give lower credit to this version versus, say, the Disneyland version. So this one is a 4 out of 5 for me, whereas the Disneyland one is a 5 out of 5 for me. And there's a couple of reasons. While the outside appearance of the building is so much better in Walt Disney World versus the normal generic appearance of the Disneyland one, but everything about the Disneyland ride is just better handled. The Disneyland side has the bayou at the beginning where you're traveling through, and has that beautiful restaurant that doesn't exist in the Magic Kingdom side because there's no bayou over there. You have 2 drops versus 1, and with the Magic Kingdom one, I found myself looking at the back walls way more than I wanted to. Like, there's a part in the ride where you go into and there's this big pirate ship, and in the Disneyland side it has this kind of vast feeling to it, like you're out at sea and it really has this size to it. And in the Magic Kingdom side, I could see the wall, and I could tell how small that space was, and it just made the entire ride feel smaller than it should. Still like the ride, but when comparing the two, you want to do the Disneyland side more. Food-wise over here, you have the Sunshine Tree Terrace, which does slushies and a citrus swirl. You have the Aloha Isles, which does their version of the Dole Whip and some pineapples. They have the Tortuga Tavern, where you get burritos and tacos and things of that nature. It's alright, it's not amazing. Then you also have this thing called the Pirate League, which is kind of like the Bippity Boppity Boutique. Basically, you go in with your kid, and your kid gets transformed into a pirate and gets to experience being a pirate. It is pricey. I don't really recommend it, especially the pirate one. Like, you can get your kid a pirate outfit for way less and let them have fun in a different way. But, you know, it's your call. It is something that your kid may enjoy. Next, we have Frontierland, where you have the brand new Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Now, this used to be Splash Mountain, and it just got reformatted into Tiana's Bayou Adventure. I have not gotten to ride on it since it became this version, but I have ridden on it when it was the Splash Mountain version, and I have watched and listened to people talk about it. As for the ride itself, it's basically you're traveling through the bayou, join Tiana on this adventure, where she's getting her company ready to go and start, making food and doing all this, that, and the other. It's solid enough. Like it's a reimagining that I don't really feel the ride needed. Like I don't think Splash Mountain had enough in it to justify the outcry for it to change and become this. I get why the movie might be controversial, but there was nothing in the ride to add to that controversy. But I think they did some good stuff with this, despite me not particularly loving it. But there's good animatronics in it. The songs in it are pretty good, and it still has that big giant drop. It's a solid 4 out of 5 for me from what I've seen and heard. Again, I haven't ridden on since it became this. I think it's got some good stuff in it, but it still, I don't think, holds a candle to the original. There is a Disneyland counterpart for this one, and they are basically the same except for the ride vehicle itself. Both of them it's basically a log with seats in it, but the Disneyland side, it's a toboggan style, where you basically line up as a row of 5, and you're in each other's laps almost, kind of thing, versus the Magic Kingdom side, where the seats are all, they're legitimate seats, and there's like 8 of them, side by side. It's more comfortable, it's easier to get in and out of, you can get more people on it over time, so the line can be a little less dramatically long than the Disneyland side of it. And I found with the Magic Kingdom side, you're gonna get less soaked from that side. Like I rode in the front row with me and my mom as these both fairly heavier set people, and we didn't even get wet. Like it barely splashed us. And some people that's a negative. I appreciated that. I'm like, yes, I don't want to be drenched the entire time I'm at the park. Thank you. But, it's fine. It's a rehash that didn't need to exist, but, they did it, and they could have done way worse. Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, where you're on this runaway rail train going through different parts of the mines. It's a lot of fast dips, dives, and turns. I would call this an intermediate roller coaster. Like, it's not for extremists. It doesn't have any corkscrews or anything, but it has some really good speed, some really good turns. Very fun, a lot of blast. 4.5 out of 5. Like, I like it a lot. So the only difference between this one and the Disneyland version of it is that it's set in a different town. And some of the little aesthetics are slightly different, but the ride itself is almost beat for beat the same. You also have the Country Bear Musical Jamboree. This is a brand new show that just started this year. And I haven't got to see it in person, but I have watched it a couple times. Basically, they took the old Country Bear show and now added Disney music to it. So you get to see these bear animatronics singing different Disney songs. It's pretty good. Like, I think it's my least favorite version of the Country Bears, but I'm happy to settle for it as long as we get to keep the Country Bears, because I keep worrying they're going to get rid of them like they did in Disneyland, which they destroyed to put in Winnie the Pooh. And I think they did some really good renditions of some of the songs, and it looks really fun and really energetic. I'm glad that they refurbished it. I'm glad that they made it look better. The song choices are all pretty good and work really well. It has some fun moments to it, but there's nothing in this that I would say is horrendous or really bad or makes it a show that's not fun to watch. I still enjoy it. I still think it's really good. 4.5 out of 5. We also have Tom Sawyer's Island. I considered not even bothering with this one because by the end of 2025, it's probably not even going to exist anymore because they're going to destroy it and the river surrounding it to build Cars Land. But I figured I would talk about it anyway because it still exists right now and it'll be a time capsule of like what this kind of was. So Tom Sawyer is a little island where you basically get on this raft, go over to the island, and there's a bunch of different little tunnels you can explore and this big old fort. There's 2 little islands attached by a rope bridge, which is pretty fun. It's good, it's quiet, it's a nice place to spend some time to get away from the crowds. But it's not amazing. It's not something that, like, anyone's going to be really mad that it's gone. It's just, it's a fun, quiet space to be away from some of the crowds. It's a 1.5, though, out of 5. Like, it's not one that I'm going to be crying about when it's gone. There is still going to be the Disneyland version of this, which is honestly a shame because the Disneyland version of this is way worse than the Magic Kingdom version of this. Because the Disneyland side, they closed the fort and you only have one cave and it's pirate themed and it's meh. It is a shame to lose it, but you know, it's going. We can't stop it at this point. Food-wise over here, you have Pecos Bill's Tall Tale and Cafe, where you get burgers and sandwiches. I have dined there, they're pretty good. The Golden Oak Outpost, where you can get fries and nuggets, which are pretty good. Next, we have the one really unique land between Magic Kingdom and Disneyland, which is Liberty Square. So Liberty Square is very inspired by, you know, colonial America, you know, America fighting for its freedoms style and its design and its tone. Ride-wise over here, you have the Liberty Square Riverboat, which is also going to be destroyed in a couple years to make way for Cars Land. It's a okay little river ride. You get to see a good chunk of the park through it, but it is slow and there's not a lot of seats in the space. It's fine. It's a 1 out of 5, but it's one that it's like another one I'm not going to be sad when it's gone. You have the Hall of Presidents, which is this lovely show where you get told a little bit about U.S. history, and then you get to see all of these animatronics, one for every president that has existed, and they will stand up and talk to you and do different things. It's really cool because every year that we get a new president, they build a whole new animatronic to add to this hall. It's an interesting little experience. It is definitely not one that I would recommend going on your first visit or your second, maybe like your third or fourth. Like, this is one to just put off because it's a very, very long show. It's 22 minutes and it feels like longer. Like, the video is just like kind of eternity. And then you have the president part themselves, which is cool, but there's not a lot to it. It's just every once in a while one of them will say a couple lines, and then the most recent president will have a little speech, and that's about it. But you can't get close enough to really look at them or anything, so it's like it's cool, but it's definitely not amazing. It's a 2.5. Like, it's fine. We then also have the Haunted Mansion, where you go into this old abandoned house and end up in this room that starts stretching, and you end up in these basements surrounded by ghosts, working your way throughout it. It's really fun, really creepy, really interesting. It has some interesting lore stuff to it. It's got a story to it, but you have to kind of piece the pieces together yourself, which is cool. Really well designed. Solid 5 out of 5 for me. Like, there is a version of this in Disneyland, and I have to give it to Magic Kingdom as having the better version. The Magic Kingdom's house feels more lived in and looks more realistic, whereas the Disneyland one really feels like a prop. It's also easier to parse what the story is from the Magic Kingdom side, because they built that with a story in mind, where there was not really much of a story in mind with the other one. And there's just, the effects are better used and it's better paced, and there's a whole different room called like this MC Escher staircase room, which is really cool. The one negative with this one versus the Disneyland side is they don't do anything special for Christmas over here. Whereas the Disneyland side, Jack Skellington takes over and turns the whole thing Nightmare Before Christmas style. And that's the one negative I would say with the Magic Kingdom version, is they don't do anything of that nature. It's really good. Like, I love both of them. I do have to give the slight edge to the Magic Kingdom variation. Food-wise over here, you got a couple different options. My number one recommendation, though, is actually the Liberty Tree Tavern. So this is a all-you-can-eat barbecue place. The food is absolutely delicious. They did this cookie skillet dessert, which was like sweet and perfection. It's just really good. Service is really good. It's nice aesthetic. All you can eat. Really fun. Pricey. Pretty pricey, but worth the money in my opinion. The Diamond Horseshoe, where you can get sandwiches and salads. Got some really nice designs in there. You have Sleepy Hollow, which is funnel cakes and ice cream and waffle sandwiches. And then you have the Columbia Harbor House, which is, you know, fish and chicken and shrimp and salads and things of that nature. Next we have Fantasyland. So the first thing I'm going to talk about in Fantasyland is Mickey's PhilharMagic. Now, Mickey's PhilharMagic is a 3D show where you put on these glasses and you see Donald is trying to help Mickey set up for his big concert, so he borrows Mickey's hat to make the instruments come to life. and the instruments turn on him and beat him up, and the hat ends up getting sucked into other dimensions. So Donald has to travel through different Disney realms to try and find it. And this show is just so pretty and so gorgeous and so much fun. And it just works so well. Like, legitimately, I bawl every time I go see this show. It makes me so happy to see and so happy to do. I truly love this show from the bottom of my heart. It is not only a show that I think is just perfect from start to finish, it is a show that legitimately saved a vacation that I did. So one of the years we went to Florida, we were only going to be in Florida 3 days. And we'd already decided we were going to do Universal for 2 of those days. And my mom asked me which one I picked. And I picked Magic Kingdom. I went with Magic Kingdom for 3 reasons. I wanted to ride Stitch's Great Escape. I wanted to see the Country Bears, because I loved the Country Bears and I hadn't seen them in like a decade. And I wanted to go on Pirates of the Caribbean because I heard that they were still doing the old version without the Jack Sparrow stuff added, which they had just been adding into the Disneyland side, and I hated all of the Jack Sparrow stuff being added into that. I went in, and then Jack is all throughout Pirates of the Caribbean. The Country Bears was in the worst shape I've ever seen them in. The sound didn't come through half of the speakers. The mouths were completely out of sync, and you could hear all of the gears inside the bears whenever they would move. It was very, very bad. And then I did get to ride Stitch's Great Escape, and Stitch's Great Escape is the worst ride I've ever been on in my life. Like, it is truly, truly awful. Stitch's Great Escape was originally a horror ride, and I think with the design that it was, horror would have worked, but turning it into this goofy ride featuring Stitch just failed it on so many levels. So you would enter into this building, you would get lowered in this big harness thing, would be lowered onto your shoulders. So I'm starting to freak out because I'm expecting the room to start spinning or something like that. And then you see Stitch for like 20 seconds, which was a decent animatronic, but then he disappears and you just hear him in the darkness laughing and giggling, and then every once in a while the little apparatus that you're on would go psst. And you would basically, it's like he just bounced off your shoulders, and that was it. And that was the most pathetic, disappointing, awful thing I've ever ridden on. I was just like, really? That's it? Not only is this stupid apparatus thing uncomfortable, but it was literally there just to let me feel a smidge of pressure on my shoulders? Seriously? It is legitimately the worst ride that Disney's ever done. And I was very miserable for that, after that, and for most of the rest of the day, until we stumbled into PhilharMagic. I didn't know what it was. It's like, well, it's new, we may as well try it. And I was blown away. I went back and we watched that show 3 times. Like, it was so pretty and so good, and it legitimately saved that day at Disney for me. Like, everything else was not great, but PhilharMagic was perfection that day. And I still feel it as perfection to this day. So it is easily a 5 out of 5 for me. I honestly would give it a 10 out of 5. Like, it is perfection. There is a version of this over at California Adventure side. Don't go to that one. Go to the Magic Kingdom one if you can. This is a theater that was built for this. It is made for this, and it is perfection. Highly recommend. They also have It's a Small World, which is a little boat ride where you get in and you go through these different parts of the world with these little mannequin children singing to you. It's really fun, really energetic. It is a little slow, and it is a little gets a little frustrating with some of the songs, but I really enjoyed it. It's a solid 4 out of 5 for me. So there is this version. There's also the one over at Disneyland, and I actually recommend the Disneyland one instead. So the Disneyland one has this whole elaborate building built for it with this beautiful designs, and this one is just, it's in a building, and it has some of the elements, but it's very lacking in other elements. The water path doesn't feel like it's in the dead middle of a normal room, where the Disney World one definitely has moments of that. You also are lacking the Disney characters popping up throughout, so that, you know, is one of the things I actually really love about the Disneyland one, is just picking out the different Disney characters in different lands. It's still fine. Like, there's no reason to not do the Disney World one, but it is lacking in comparison. We also have Peter Pan's Flights, where you get aboard this pirate ship and fly over London into Neverland and get to fly around and travel with Peter Pan and Wendy and fight Captain Hook. If you saw my review for the Disneyland side, you know I'm very split on this ride. And a lot of that is because at the Disneyland side of it, that line is always half an hour or more. And I've never thought the ride justifies that. But I do think this version of the ride works fairly well. I would give it a solid 3.5 out of 5. I think that the Magic Kingdom version of Peter Pan's Flight is better. The ride itself is basically the exact same. But the difference is they knew the mistakes that they'd made with the Disney version, and they fixed them. So, like, the track on the Disneyland side is very limited. They can only have X amount of ships on there. So that's what makes that line take forever, because they can't accommodate the large crowds. Okay, replace the track. But to replace that track, they would literally have to remove the roof and basically build the whole thing again from scratch. So Disneyland is not going to do that. Disney World, they planned for that. It is now an extra big track, so it can handle way more people and way more stuff. And it works really well for that. It's honestly, and I think it's just the better version for that reason, because there's a higher chance that you can get through it in a decent amount of time. You also have the Prince Charming Regal Carousel, which is a carousel. You get on a horse, it goes up and down, and you go in a circle. It's fine, it is what it is, it's a 2 out of 5, it's like every other carousel in the world. You have the Enchanted Tales with Belle. Now, I'd never heard of this. But when I was researching for this, I was like, oh, what is this? And I found footage of it. So I've never gotten to experience it, but I watched it. But having seen the clips of it, this looks super fun and great for little kids. Basically, you go into this little room, and you get picked out to be characters in a play that is going to be Belle telling the story of how she met and fell in love with the Beast. So then Belle shows up in her full regalia, tells you this story, and the different kids will pop up to be different parts of the show, and it looks like a blast that you would only want to do if you had a little kid with you. I can't imagine going in there as an adult and doing this, but it looks like a fun, great time for your kid, and at the end they get to meet Belle and hug Belle and take pictures with her and get her autograph, and it's like, that's a fun way to meet that princess. But it's really cute, really fun, really creative. 4 out of 5. I liked it a lot. I thought it was really cute, everything I saw of it. We have the Mini Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, where you join Winnie the Pooh and the gang traveling through the 100-acre woods, fighting off heffalumps and woozles, and going through a very blustery day. It's fine. It's a really decent little dark riding experience going through Pooh. It's sadly hampered by having gotten rid of 2 great rides to put this in. The first being Country Bears over in the Disneyland side, but then over here in the Magic Kingdom side, they got rid of Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. From everything I've seen and everything I've heard about the Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, because I did not get to ride this version of it, it looks great. Like, there were 2 tracks, it was this big elaborate thing, very fun and energetic from what I've seen, and was really popular, and it's like, you got rid of Mr. Toad for this? Really? Like, I get it. Like, it's Winnie the Pooh, it's popular, but I'm like, you're also Disney World. You have the space. You could have put it anywhere else. You didn't have to get rid of a ride to put this in. Winnie the Pooh is fine. It's the same kind of idea, but it's lacking the chaotic fun that Mr. Toad's had. It's good for little kids. It's a solid 2.5 out of 5. Like, it's fine. Like, I don't hate it, but it's let down by, having to get rid of really good rides to put it in. There is a Winnie the Pooh at both parks. The Disneyland one and the Magic Kingdom one are basically the identical paths. The only difference is the ride vehicle. In the Magic Kingdom side, it looks like you're in one of Winnie the Pooh's honey pots. And in Disneyland side, you look like you're in a big old honeycomb. That's literally the only difference. It doesn't matter. The Mad Tea Party, where you get in this giant teacup and you try to spin around as fast as you can and get yourself sick and get everyone in the car with you sick. It's really fun, really energetic, it's good for all ages. 4 out of 5. It's not something you really have to do, but it is fun to do once in a while. There is a Disneyland side, they're identical, doesn't really matter. You have the Seven Dwarfs Minecart. This is a little roller coaster where you get in this little minecart and you travel through the mines, dipping and diving. It's a really good beginner roller coaster. You get to see the Seven Dwarfs in their mines, digging things. Like, it is as little kiddish as you can kind of get. It is a 3-minute ride, and it usually has a half-hour or longer wait from what I've seen. So, like, the first time I went on it, it did not have a fast pass at the time, so we had to wait in the line, and the line was an hour long. And yeah, even if it had been extremely entertaining, it was 3 minutes after having waited an hour to get on it. It's fine. It's a really good beginner coaster. 2 out of 5 for me. Like, it's not something to really go out of your way for. Definitely don't wait in the line if it's more than half an hour. You have the Under the Sea Journey of the Little Mermaid, which has this lovely aesthetic outside of this big building that looks like Prince Eric's castle. You basically get in this giant clamshell and travel through, seeing Ariel's story from beginning to end, and seeing Ursula and all the underwater friends. It's a solid dark ride. I give it a 3 out of 5. There is one version of this over in California Adventure as well. They're pretty much identical except for the entrance. The California Adventure side looks like a normal generic theater, because it used to be before they remodeled into that. And versus the Prince Eric's actual castle from Little Mermaid. I give it to the Magic Kingdom just for the aesthetic of that alone. We have Dumbo the Flying Elephant, which is the second of the 3 flying rides, where you get right inside of Dumbo and you can control how high you go and how low you go. It's a fun little aerial ride. It's good for like little kids and fun. It's a solid 3 out of 5. It's not something amazing, but it's okay. There is a version of it at Disneyland. They're identical, except the Magic Kingdom one has 2 sets of the ride versus the single set that's at Disneyland, because that one always has a really long line because there's not enough. So they planned ahead with the Magic Kingdom side and made a better ride. We then have the Barnstormer, another beginner little kid roller coaster. Basically, you're inside this plane being piloted by Goofy. It's dips and dives and turns. It is very much a beginner roller coaster. It's a lot like Gadget's Go Coaster over in Toontown and the Disneyland side. It's a solid 3. It's fine. It's really good for little kids if you want to get your kids into a roller coaster. It's a good starting point. The Seven Dwarfs Minecart has the better aesthetic. I think the Barnstormers is the better ride, but they're kind of the same. Food-wise, the big one here, the one that everyone wants to eat at, the one that's so big and famous, is the Be Our Guest restaurant, which is very Beauty and the Beast themed. They got some steaks and fish and French onion soup, and they also have the gray stuff for dessert. I hear it's delicious. This is a big, elaborate, fancy dinner. Everything I've heard about it sounds amazing. It is also one that is nearly impossible to get into. I've never gotten to dine there. It is way too hard. Like, every other restaurant I know plans like 2 to 3 months in advance. The Be Our Guest is like 6 months in advance reservations. Like, you have to know you're going and you're doing this to make reservations for this one. It is also very, very pricey. Like, I want to do it, but I don't think I'm ever going to plan ahead enough to do that. But it is definitely one that if you can get into it, you should do. There's also the Cinderella's Royal Table. This is inside the castle. It's this big, elaborate character dining thing where you get to meet all of the Disney princesses. Some of the good, better food and everything. I haven't gotten to try it. That's also on my one of the only ones on my list where I'm like, yes, I really want to go eat here, and I've never gotten to. You have Pinocchio's Village House, which is flatbread pizzas and chicken nuggets and salads. You have the Friar's Nook, which is macaroni and cheese and hot dogs and potato chips. Gaston's Tavern, where there are cinnamon rolls and pork shanks. Cheshire Cafe, where you can get coffee and frozen lemonade. There's also the Bippity Boppity Boutique, where if you have a kid between the ages of like 3 and 12, you can take them and they can get dressed as a very fancy Disney princess or valiant knight. If you really want your little girl to feel like a Disney princess, this is a thing to do. It is very pricey. Not sure it's something I can ever really recommend to somebody. I only recommend it if she's old enough that she's a good chance she will remember it. So definitely don't take her at 3 years old. Like, no, that's a 7, 8, 9-year-old thing to do. Finally, we have Tomorrowland. We have the Tomorrowland Speedway, which is basically the Autopia. It is a little car ride where you pop in and you get to drive this little car at a max speed of around 6.5 miles per hour. And there's a track down the middle, so you can't really move or do anything. It just grinds against it every time you get to a turn. Very slow, very boring. Only good for little kids that really want to drive. But even I, as a little kid driving around on this, went, this isn't fun. It's wish fulfillment, but if you can get to the age that you can drive a go-kart on an actual go-kart track, this is like the worst thing in comparison. It is a 1 out of 5 for me. Like, it is completely skippable. There's nothing in this that makes it worth doing. Honestly, if you were going to get rid of any ride to put in Winnie the Pooh, why didn't you get rid of this? Every year people will be like, yeah, you can get rid of this one, please. We don't need this one. You can take this. Go. And they're like, no, we're keeping it forever. And between the two, between this one and Autopia, they're identical. There's a slight difference in the track, but that's about it. We then have Space Mountain, which is a roller coaster in the dark where you load up into this rocket-like vehicle and get shot into the dark, and there's dips and dives and curves. And I truly do love Space Mountain. I love the aesthetic, I love the scoring and the way it's done. It's got some really fast speed to it. I will say, though, I have to give the credit to the Disneyland version of it over this one. And most of that is the ride vehicle. So the Disneyland side has a more traditional roller coaster thing, whereas the Magic Kingdom side has a toboggan-esque one where you slide in and your knees are basically up against your chest and you're just banging your head against the back of the seat the entire ride. It's fine, but it's definitely not a super fun ride if you're a slightly big person like I am. Like, it's one that they need to update that track and add a more comfortable ride vehicle. But that's just, my thoughts. This one, though, I have to give a 4 out of 5 versus like the Disneyland one where I gave it a much higher rating. We have the Astro Orbiter, which is the third and final of the, let's experience what it's like to fly. You get inside this rocket, you get a little level that you can make it go up and down with. It's fun. It's the exact same as Dumbo. It's the exact same as Aladdin's Magic Carpets. The one thing that makes this version stand out, which makes it really cool, is it's on top of a building. So you can see all of the park from there. And it's a really nice view. It's definitely better than the Disneyland side where it's in this hole at the front entrance of Tomorrowland. It's not much better than any of the others, but that view makes up for a lot, giving it a solid 3.5 out of 5. You have the Tomorrowland Transit Authority People Mover. This is a track ride where you basically pop in onto this little white vehicle and it takes you through Tomorrowland, telling you about the different rides and the different aspects, and you get to see all of Tomorrowland from this elevated view. It's a little slow, it can be a little dull and a little boring, but it's also a place where you get to sit out of the sun and relax and catch your breath, and it's a decent show and kind of fun. I like it a lot. I'm really happy it survived and didn't get turned into something like Rocket Rods and get destroyed like the one over in Disneyland did. It's a solid 3 out of 5. Like, it's not something to go out of your way for ever, but it's a fun way to kill a couple minutes, especially if it's a hot day and you just want to sit and relax. Walt Disney's Carousel of Progress. You get into this big circular theater, and you sit down and the theater moves around and you see this animatronic man talking about the advancements of technology and what the future holds. It's a very slow show. It's got some interesting stuff into it. It's very charming, but it's also very old. It's one of those ones where they keep threatening to get rid of it, and I keep hoping that they don't, because it's like, it is old, but it has some really fun stuff to it. It has some really great music and stuff into it. Every single time they transfer to a new room, they sing this lovely song, which
There's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow shining at the end of every day.
It's such a great song and a great send-off for each of that. Really fun, but very slow. You have to be in the real right mindset. But you also get to sit down in an air-conditioned theater. 3.5 out of 5. We also have Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin, where you join Buzz Lightyear at Star Command as a Space Ranger and help him fight against the evil Emperor Zurg. You get this little laser gun and you're shooting these targets. It's really fun, really creative. I truly do love this one. It's just a blast to play from start to finish. It's solid 4.5 out of 5 for me. Like, there's a Disneyland equivalent. They're basically identical, but I have a special place in my heart for this Magic Kingdom version. I don't know why. Probably because this was the first version of it that I rode, and I just had such a blast with it when I did. You have the Monsters, Inc. laugh floor, where basically the monsters from Monsters, Inc. have invited humans to come hear them tell very bad jokes, to build up their laugh meter so that they get power for their cities. And you can even submit your own jokes for the show. It's cute, it's fun, but it's just a thing that you can do. It's a 2.5 out of 5. Like, it's a lot like Turtle Talk with Crush, where it's just like, it's a thing you can do, but I wouldn't go out of my way for it. It's fun for your little kids type of thing. They get to laugh at some, juvenile humor. But, yeah. We then have the brand new Tron Light Cycle Power Run. This is a roller coaster that dips and dives and speeds out over Tomorrowland. You get on top of this ride vehicle, which is basically set up like one of the little motorcycles, and you're basically riding the whole vehicle, like leaning forward fast. It is energetic. Everything I've heard about it tells me that it's this amazing roller coaster that's a blast from start to finish. I have not gotten to ride it myself, not for lack of trying, but it just didn't work out. But it's really fun, really energetic. If everyone tells me to go do it, I have to highly recommend it as well. Solid 5 out of 5 from everything I've heard. Food-wise, over here we have the Cosmic Ray Starlight Cafe, which does burgers and chicken and rotisserie chicken and ribs and stuff. I've had the chicken and ribs there. They were really good. You have Anti-Gravity's Galactic Goodies, which is ice creams and smoothies. You have the Cool Ship, which is turkey legs. Launching Pad, which is specialty hot dogs. And then you have the Tomorrowland Terrace Restaurant, which is burgers and pastas and sandwiches and salads. And that is my overview of the Magic Kingdom. I'm always kind of split on the Magic Kingdom myself. I do love elements of it, but there's elements of it that always are kind of a bit iffy and kind of like, oh, we could have done this a little differently or a little better. Again, like some of my favorite experiences are from this park, and then some of my least favorite experiences are from this park. Some of them in the same trip. It's always hit or miss on this one. I love parts of it, and I don't like parts of it. It's kind of like an alternate dimension version of Disneyland, and that makes it kind of interesting and kind of cool. My top 5 recommendations. Number 5 is going to be the Seven Dwarfs Minecart, and I'm only saying that one because it's unique to this park. The ride is okay, but if you're only going to do 5 rides in this park, I say squeeze that one in because it's a unique experience. Number 4 is the Country Bear Musical Jamboree. I think it's a really fun show. I think it has a lot of good stuff to it. Number 3, the Haunted Mansion. I think it's got some really great stuff in it. I think it's got some really good design stuff. Number 2 would be the Tron Light Cycle Power Run. And my number 1 recommendation, of course, is Mickey's PhilharMagic. Like, just a great, super fun show. Definitely worth doing. It's like if you can only do the 5, those are 5 really good ones to do. The ones to skip are basically, if you've been to Disneyland, skip any of the ones where I was like, they're the same. You don't have to experience the differences. Other than that, stay away from the Tomorrowland Speedway, stay away from the Magic Carpet Ride. Overall, though, I do like the majority of this ride, and I think it's a really good experience with it. There's some great stuff in this park, there's some bad stuff in this park, but these are all just kind of my opinions. What do you all think? Do you like some of these rides? Do you hate some of these rides? Are there restaurants that you've been to that you would recommend to people? please let people know in the comments below your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts. I am very interested to see what people think of the food and even the rides in Magic Kingdom, because I've been to the park a couple times. I've definitely not been to Disneyland more, so I have way more attachment to it. And I'm interested to see what like hardcore Magic Kingdom people think of Magic Kingdom. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I will be back at some point to talk about Epcot and the other parks at Walt Disney World. I may not get to that until March. Sorry, I have other things that are trying to press on me right now that I really want to get out as well. But I promise I will at least finish all 4 of the Walt Disney World parks, and I may even talk about maybe 1 or 2 of the water parks. Happy watching, happy reading, have a magical Disney day. Bye.